Welcome to Beacon Unitarian Universalist congregation, gathering virtually in these days of physical distancing. When we meet in person, we gather at our location in Summit, New Jersey, on the corner of Waldron and Springfield Avenues. Each and every time we gather is a unique time, made especially so by your presence. We're delighted and honored that you chose to be with us. As Unitarian Universalists, every time we meet, whether virtually or in person, we covenant. That means we promise to uphold, affirm, and promote 7 principles. You're going to hear a lot more about them as our senior youth step bravely into our virtual pulpit. There's also an 8th principle, and our ministers, Reverend Emilie and Reverend Dr. Robin Tanner, will be speaking more about it. At Beacon, we seek to be radically inclusive, to feed the human spirit and heal the world. Come, come, whoever you are, however you are, sings the poet Rumi. The 12th century mystic invites us all, regardless of who we are, the imperfections we carry, the joys and deep sorrows, to gather as one body. Across the centuries, he urges us to be radically inclusive, to welcome with the same warmth the stranger and the old friend. Each one of us, connected by our shared humanity, seekers of justice, wanderers, come, let us worship together.
Out across the ripples of this dawn and day, the light touches this northern hemisphere. Already it has leapt its way over oceans, blanketed the continents where now you are cradled into sleep, day after day, casting life into this blue ball home. Even as we weep and stillness falls like stone, the light is pledging her return, gifting warmth, signal of all that endures, each memory and beloved, once kissed by the same waves of brilliance, from sun to soul to flame. So we begin again.
Joys and laments, miracles and losses. How is it that they so often come at the same time? How do we hold them at the same time? As a spiritual community, we light candles each week, knowing that each of us is kindling flames of paradox. Light a candle in your home, and we will light a candle for you at Beacon. Call out a name, honor a feeling held close to your tender heart, and we will help you carry it. This week we light a candle for former minister Reverend Kim Waldszewski, her wife Tara, and their 2 children, Tobias and Malcolm. This week, Malcolm suffered from a sudden illness that has made his body incapable of recovery. Their loss is our loss. We lament this tragedy, honor their pain, and feel the sorrow of all those who know and love them. Blessings upon our joys. Blessings upon our laments, miracles, and losses. All held together in this one present moment of candlelight.
When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in,
At Beacon, we keep trying to plan next week and the week after that, next month, and even next year. We keep asking the question, well, what's it going to look like? And the answer is, who knows? It's gotten so bad that we've even had to resort to the magic 8-ball. Magic 8-ball, will we be reopening in June? The stars say no. This pandemic is magnifying the world we've created, enlarging our disparities, enlarging the injustices of our time, and amplifying the ways that we've been living out of balance. In a time of crisis, we typically lose our North Star. We lose the principles that guide us. Instead, we live from reaction to reaction. We let our unconscious fear and anxiety make choices for us. We've got to remember our values, those most deeply held. And then we can't just speak them. We've got to live out of them each and every day, each and every moment. Remember, we Unitarian Universalists are about deeds, not creeds. So how do we live with integrity? How do we live out from our values? Unfortunately, the magic 8-ball doesn't really have an answer for that. When I can't see beyond the horizon, I find inspiration in those who can. And of course, those who can see beyond the horizon are our youth, those younger than us who will carry on after us. Their vision extends farther afield than some of our own. Are you ready to look beyond the horizon? Today, our youth will share their voices on the principles that bind Unitarian Universalists together. Now, our principles were not delivered to us from on high. Instead, they grew out of our grassroots, where they were debated and voted on in our congregations and ultimately in our UUA General Assembly, so that now it is written into our UUA bylaws. We, Unitarian Universalists, covenant to affirm and promote these 7 principles. You will hear them today in our service. That is what we're saying, is that we promise to one another to live out our shared values in order that we may be in right relationship, in order that we may discover integrity. 7 teenagers today will share how they live out their promises and discover their source of integrity. And as we begin to see over the horizon through their voices, I want you to know that there are values taking root in the fertile soil of our grassroots community. An 8th principle. After working with congregations for 20 years, Unitarian Universalist leader Paula Cole-Jones discovered that good UUs could live the values of their 7 principles without considering the systemic power of racism and oppression. There is nothing in our shared promises that explicitly calls us and holds us accountable to dismantling racism and oppression in ourselves and in our institutions. One Unitarian Universalist youth in Lexington, Kentucky, looked out across the horizon and shared what she saw with her minister and her board of trustees. Maya Wade Harper learned about the 8th principle at a youth leadership school. And when she returned home, she started conversations with her leaders. She talked about the systemic racism that she saw both in her congregation and in Unitarian Universalism. She says it is here and it's got to go. Thus, she writes, began the whirlwind of work my congregation and I did to vote on the principle. To me, the 8th principle is a call to action to stand up for people who are oppressed and crush white supremacy. As a person of color and activist, Maya says, I also find a calling to stand up for myself and others. My mama tells me that this work is sacred, and I agree. It is sacred and necessary. The 8th principle asks us to journey towards spiritual wholeness. So come, let's look beyond the horizon.
Hi, my name is Cameron Lip, and I believe in the inherent dignity and worth of every person. This isn't the same as saying we're all equal, because I don't think that's true. I think that some people can be bad people and other people can be good people, but no matter what, you can always change because everything is transient. Some people waste time and do nothing with their lives, but other people change the world. And we're all born with a seed of potential. And, you can choose whether to nurture it or step on it, but it's always going to be there no matter what. I do believe in reincarnation, or at least I try to, because I can't fully prove it. But, imagine a world in which reincarnation is a thing. I mean, imagine how much nicer everyone would be to each other. I know Socrates believed in it, and when challenged, he would just say, we don't know what happens, so why would I choose to believe that there's nothing after death and bum everyone out? I'm paraphrasing, obviously, but the general sentiment comes through there. So I choose to believe in reincarnation because I think that the world would be a lot better if everyone did. And I think there's a life force within everyone that binds everyone together within the past, the present, and the future. And I think that this is the seed that I was talking about before. It can be cultivated and grown into something amazing, or it can be neglected and left a simple seed. And if you believe in reincarnation, you would treat others the way they treat you, the golden rule, because they are you. They are that soul. And I mean, if you can just imagine a world in which people truly did that, it would be amazing. And this is why I choose to believe in reincarnation, and I choose to see the beauty in every person, because I know that in some respect I am them. And I do mean every person when I say every person. I've been growing up in a liberal bubble for a while, and I've heard a lot of things said about Trump supporters, or even just non-democratic people in general, that I consider to be not so welcoming as Democrats like to think that they can be. I know it's almost impossible not to crack jokes about the big man and his followers online. But as much as some people may like to tell me that they aren't, they are me. And hating those who you consider your enemies only leads to the perpetuation of what we're seeing these days. Who you consider your enemy started out just the same as you, as with that little seed, and just had different guidance. Instead of removing yourself from them and talking about them from a safe distance, get close to them, learn from them, and teach them, because everyone can grow, even you, and even them. That's it.
The second principle of Unitarian Universalism is justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. I think it's important for everyone to find a community that reflects these goals of universal justice and gender and racial equity. I happen to be grateful for being part of a community like that. I play the sport Ultimate Frisbee, and these ideas and principles are built right into the game. Along with the rules and competitiveness, the spirit of the game is a huge piece of Ultimate. Sportsmanship, honesty, and acceptance are all pieces of this spirit. Another part of spirit of the game is Ultimate is the system of self-governing. In the game, there are no referees, so the integrity of the game depends on each player's responsibility to uphold the spirit. Ultimate is really progressive in its gender and racial equity. One of the ways Ultimate is pushing its progressive values is through the Girls' Ultimate movement, which it tries to open the field to more women in the competitive world of athletics. Another thing I was really super lucky to experience was attending Summer Camp National Ultimate Training Camp, where the campers were divided up into 8 mixed teams. A really cool experience of building and growing as a co-gender team, something I had not much experience with. Another thing I experienced in NUTSI was the talk on gender equity inside and outside of Ultimate. This was a really cool experience for me and really gave me a sense of how connected the sport was to the issue. Another real amazing piece of Ultimate is the amount of broadcast games. The professional Ultimate organizations responsible for streaming and broadcasting professional men, women, and mixed games in equal amounts. Ultimate Frisbee and the second UU principle are connected with the community of the sport being rooted in human relations, compassion, justice, and equity.
I live the values of the third principle in many ways. I believe this is very important to accept everybody, and one of the most accepting communities I've ever been a part of is the community centered around UU youth events. That community, as well as the community built around this congregation's youth group, has been very influential on my life the past few years, and I don't think I would be who I am today without it. I live this value by continuing the acceptance and inclusivity you find in all these youth spaces into my life outside of them, and I try to always accept others and myself for who they are. In terms of my spiritual growth, the meaning of that has always been very vague to me, but I still have tried to encourage spiritual growth in any leadership position I have occupied, especially during this time, where I've helped set up a few, yak worships over Zoom, as well as setting up youth group every week, but also over Zoom. In short, I live out this value through the communities I participate in and help build, which I can hopefully continue to do in college next year.
Everyone, this is Meski, and I will be Speaker of the House for the 2020-2021 school year, and I have chosen the fourth principle. And the fourth UU principle is a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. And this principle, in my opinion, is extremely vital because anyone can be a member of the church, no matter your truth or your meaning. And what makes Beacon as unique of a place as it is the fact that it's a melting pot of different cultures and beliefs and ways of life. And I happen to be a person that has struggled with finding the meaning to life. I've always asked my mom the question, what is the meaning of life? And I've always expected a solid, concrete answer. But because of my exposure to the members of Beacon, I've been provided with so many different outlooks and perspectives. And because of that, I've come to my own conclusion and answered my own question on what the meaning of life is. And I discovered that the meaning of life changes with every experience and interaction. And it's not just one solidified concept, but one that changes with moments lived. And this principle is also important because it emphasizes that it's not just a free search for truth and meaning, but also a responsible one. And the inclusion of the word responsible in the principle is a great reflection on Unitarian Universalism because our words and our actions have an impact on others. And while we're discovering our truth and our meaning, we could be impacting someone else. And I think that's really important. And right now it's easy to feel stuck and like life is on pause, but I believe it's actually the contrary, because before our lives were on pause in a different kind of way, in a way where we didn't have time to discover our truth, or we didn't really have time to find the meaning within ourselves. But now everything's kind of slowed down. We're at home and you have that time for yourself. And a reason why this principle resonates with me is because I have an incurable itch for travel and exploration. And I know that with my life, I want to go to as many places as possible and to meet and converse with as many people as possible. And I want to hear endless stories. I want to witness different cultures and compare and incorporate the values of all those I meet and converse with my own. And the fourth principle in my case encourages my hunger for travel and adventure, because those experiences for me would help me find my truth. But I don't believe that it's necessary to travel around the world to find meaning or truth. I believe that all that needs to be done is this one thing, and that one thing is to just embrace moments, to keep your senses and mind open to feeling and to conversations and to whatever experiences might come your way. And if you keep your mind and feelings and everything open, then I think you'll discover your meaning and your truth. And this principle will follow me wherever I go, and I also expect that as I grow, the significance of what this principle means to me will also change as I change. So thank you so much and have a great day.
When we first started physical distancing, we weren't at all sure how the youth group would react. Their Sunday evening gatherings are very rooted in being in one another's physical presence. They check in, they play games, they go into smaller groups called touch groups where they can engage with one another on a deeper level. We weren't at all sure that it would work, but we felt we had to give it a try. And so we held a virtual Zoom meeting, and they came. It was so exciting to have them show up for one another, and they continued to do so Sunday nights. Some of the youth you have seen today came to Beacon when they had just started walking or had entered kindergarten. Others have come much later as 9th and 10th graders. Could you tell the difference? Could you tell who's grown up in the congregation and who is a much more recent attendee? I'm guessing probably not, particularly if you haven't been leading them in their small groups or been a youth advisor. And the fact that you probably can't tell the difference speaks to the power of our programs and our gatherings. Each one of them speaking their own truth, their own interpretation of our 7 principles, their eloquence today, their integrity and honesty, not to mention their bravery. This is what we're trying to do in our programs for our children and youth, building resilient, compassionate, and confident youth. And so this morning's offering goes to the good works and ministries of this congregation. Now more than ever, Beacon needs you. Our youth need you to support the congregation that makes it possible for them to meet. So please, won't you give generously? The instructions are in the chat box, over there or over there, and on the slide that you will soon see. Thank you for your generosity.
Hi, I'm Kathleen Landis, and something I'm really passionate about is politics. And that's why I wanted to talk about the 5th UU principle, which is the right of conscience and the use of the democratic process in our congregations and in society at large. To say that everyone has the right of conscience, to me, says that everyone's moral compass is valid, and nobody deserves to be told that what they believe and what they prioritize isn't in some way the truth. If there's one thing I've learned knocking on doors and registering people to vote, it's that not one person has the exact same conscience. We all have slightly different priorities and beliefs based on the truth our world has made us live. And in politics, that translates to what you are willing to sacrifice to see your priority accomplished. There are some people who support things like torture that I personally can't support or condone, but I can see how people might think this way and how they believe that crossing that line is the only surefire way to keep our country and the people they love safe. Because at the end of the day, all our different priorities tend to come from the same place of wanting to help people and make sure that we and the people we love are living the best lives we can. That's where the democratic process comes in and makes sure that we act in the interest of the majority. Anytime we ignore the voices of those not represented, we tell them that their conscience is inferior. But everybody's truth deserves to be heard. And that's what the 5th principle is really getting at. Give everyone a voice and a place to express their truths and follow their moral compasses.
Hello, my name is Emilie Kramer. I'm a sophomore at Columbia High School, and I'm one of the co-leaders of the environmental club there. This past year, we've been taking bigger steps to act and educate people on the climate crisis. On September 20th, 2019, the leaders of the Environmental Club and the Students for Social Justice Club came together and organized a local climate strike in solidarity with the larger ones taking place around the world. We encouraged students to walk out of their classes and join us in marching to Town Hall, where we had a few student speakers. One of them was me. After we wrapped up speeches, we marched through town and returned to school, where we had activities such as voter registration, phone banking, the decorating of reusable bags, and voter registration. At the beginning of November, we learned that another strike was being organized for December 6th. We reached out to other environmental clubs and joined them at a larger strike in Newark. You may have seen it on the news. That night, we held a teach-in for the community with panelists from many different environmental organizations, including Newark Water Coalition, Civic Story, Food and Water Watch, and even some Columbia High School teachers. Most recently, we planned an array of events for the week of Earth Day. It was also the 50th anniversary of this special day. Again, we organized panelists who presented via Zoom calls. We also held a movie screening and a benefit concert. Since we had to present all of our activities virtually, we also launched daily posts on our Instagram of small actions that one could accomplish to be more environmentally friendly, including reviewing and understanding recycling guidelines, taking part in Meatless Mondays, using more natural light, and picking up a few pieces of trash every day. The Environmental Club strives to open minds and educate our community about the climate crisis. We need to work together to change our mindset and lifestyle because that is the only way to slow down the effects of climate change and reach liberty, justice, and peace for everyone.
My days usually started at 7 a.m., struggling to get out of bed and complaining about not wanting to go to school. From the minute I would open my eyes, everything was go, go, go. Get changed, eat breakfast, run to the car, get to school on time, take some tests, talk to friends, come home, and stress some more. Now time seems to almost be a complete standstill. I wake up at 8, I don't change out of my PJs, I go back to my room after eating breakfast, and then I don't get to see my friends. It's funny to me now that I complain every day about not wanting to go to school, but now it is one of the things that I miss the most. Yes, it was stressful, but school is the place where you get to see all of your friends and just be around people your age. As the possibility of not returning to school this year became more and more likely, I've thought a lot about the seniors that I'll most likely never get to see again. Some of them I was friendly with, and some of them I didn't know at all. But it isn't until the moments of eye contact in the hall and the short interactions in class are taken away from you that you realize how connected you actually were with these people. During this time, I've really been thinking about connectedness. The relationships with people that we are so used to having are completely different now. I wonder about the next time that I'll get to hug my friend and sit side by side someone instead of remaining 6 feet apart. Connectedness is something we have to work hard for now instead of being presented with daily. You can no longer just approach your colleague at work or your friend in school to ask them something when your paths cross. You have to take that extra effort to call them or text them. This is where bonds between people will either become stronger or weaken. It is on us now to reach out to comfort or cheer someone with words, instead of the power behind just this simple touch. As we retreat to the confines of our houses, we also begin to look at the world differently from before. You realize that throughout the world, every single person is going through a similar experience, which is so different from anything that has ever happened before. We have always been tied together, but it is so much clearer to see our interdependentness during this time. The virus started in China, which is all the way across the globe, yet here we are in the same position as all of these countries with people that we aren't even aware of. Our existences are strung together on one common thread right now, and it is uniting us without our knowing. People are rising up to spread positivity and help others, and these acts of good spread to others who continue this chain to their inner circle, and so on and so forth. And if we look out our windows, we can see how connected we are to the nature around us. You can see groups of deer and other wildlife hanging around highways or moving toward formerly busy towns because people have taken a step back and are no longer inhabiting every single space. Skies have begun to clear in busy cities and trash is retreating from every space on the ground. We can see how our actions directly impact creatures other than ourselves, and how reliant and connected all beings are upon one another on this earth. So while this is a taxing time, and all we want to do is see our friends and hold on to those we love, now is the time to appreciate connection. Call people you haven't spoken to in a while. Reach out. See the impact our actions have on the world, and see how the world impacts us.
When I first became a Unitarian Universalist, what drew me to this faith was that concept of continuous revelation or spiritual evolution. When the 7 principles were adopted, they were not envisioned to be set in stone forever. In fact, there have been suggested changes over the years. Most especially and recently in the last few decades, it has become apparent that an eighth principle is needed. Drawing from the work of Paula Cole Jones, a lifelong Unitarian Universalist and leader in our faith, and Bruce Pollock Johnson, the Eighth Principle Project was born. Paula concluded after her extensive work and leadership in our denomination that you could be a very good Unitarian Universalist following those 7 principles and yet never have to deal at a systemic level or think about racism. This was disturbing and yet true. The 8th principle states, "We, the member congregations of the Unitarian Universalist Association, covenant to affirm and promote journeying toward wholeness, spiritual wholeness, by working to build a diverse, multicultural, beloved community by our actions that accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and in our institutions." We have been at many moments as a denomination on the right side of history, most notably with racial justice in the civil rights movement. And yet it was also in the late 1960s and early 70s when we as a denomination defunded one of the most significant endeavors within our faith to move toward racial justice. In the history and legacy of slavery, there were those among our leaders who fought hard for abolition and those who defended the practice of slavery. When you consider the silence among so many congregations, so many pulpits, after Trayvon Martin was murdered, it becomes apparent the work we must do as a denomination to dismantle racism. Our congregations in the U.S. remain largely composed of those of white European descendants, and while significant progress has been made with regard to female-identified leadership and LGBTQIA leadership, we have far yet to go in fulfilling the vision of beloved community. At Beacon, we are hoping to adopt, we are intending, committing to adopt the 8th principle not only as an act of making history right, but more so as an act of spiritual integrity. Our faith calls us now to journey toward a wholeness that can be in this generation, to truly be beloved to one another, to build a faith where our interdependence is met with mutuality, love in action with justice. I believe in this faith. Now, perhaps more than ever, is it clear that our survival, our very souls, depend upon one another. It is in the accountability, the love in action, the listening and learning from our ancestors and elders, as well as our children and our youth, that a new revelation for this generation emerges with full brilliance. Today, truth has indeed been revealed. May we answer her call with love, with compassion, and yes, with commitment.
Though below me I feel no motion, standing on these mountains and plains, far away from the rolling ocean,
Perhaps, beloved, you have had a moment in our time together, or several, that yearns for some deeper connection and exploration. Maybe, like me, your week has been filled with weeping and with pain. A pain that longs to be held by community. I want to invite each of you to join us right after the service for our virtual coffee half hour with a facilitator and a small group of 5 to 6 fellow friends on the journey. We offer a time to connect, to hold one another, to be present to all that is our lives. You'll see the link appear in just a moment in the chat box as well as on the screen. But before you head off to our virtual coffee half hour, I want to offer us all this blessing until we meet again. In this week, as we navigate loss and loneliness, rage, and the brilliant bittersweet that keeps emerging, may we love one another against all reason and reckoning. May we make ourselves fools for this love, knowing that when all is lost, this yet endures. When all is gone and shattered and broken, this yet remains. Love one another. Love one another for all the days we are given, and far beyond it will endure.